Good morning. It is Sunday, February 10th, 2019, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Let me just briefly explain the format of these sessions and the Product Mentor program in general. The Product Mentor program was started about 5-6 years ago with the goal to pair experienced product people with earlier career product people to help make better product people. Today we're joined by many of the members, both mentors and mentees. So for all those folks that are part of the program this session, give us a little wave, say a quick hello with your hand. And then we're actually going to do introductions by all of the members of the program. Why don't we do that in just 1 minute? Just a reminder, you can post questions to the Q&A section at theproductmentor.com/live. As the questions come in, I will then jump in and pass them to our mentor during the talk. If you do post a question and you're one of the mentors or mentees, I will actually switch the video over to you so you can ask your question directly. If you're not in the program and I see your question come in, I will do my best to get it myself over to the presenter. So let's do some introductions. Let's keep it pretty straightforward and not super long. Just your name, your role, where you physically are in the world, like don't say your living room. That's not as interesting as what part of the world you're in, and your company. That being said, so I'm just going to go relatively randomly from left to right, at least on my screen, and start with Alberto.
Hey, I'm Alberto. I've been doing product for a really long time. I live in New York City. Latest product is a platform that lets you invest in art, just like you can in stock and other alternative assets lately. So something like being able to invest in real estate, but by buying shares instead of entire buildings.
Great, thank you. Andrew.
I'm Andrew Shue. Yeah, I've been a product manager for about 7 years, and I'm currently working at Oscar Health, where I'm helping manage all of our provider and doctor information so that we can kind of serve our members in the most effective way.
Great. Chris B.
Yep, so I'm Chris Butler, Director of AI for Philosophy. I've been a product manager for about 18 years now, and I live in New York.
Great. Okay, Dominic.
Hi there, Dominic. In Brighton, in the UK, work for a company called Dillstone Systems, based in London. I'm a product manager for a product called File Finder, which is a tool used by the executive search industry.
Great. Over to Foothill.
So that's probably me. Is that me? Yes.
It is you. Yeah.
I'm Sharon Allpress. I'm a mentee in the program. I've been a product manager for about 3 or 4 years, officially, the official title. I work for DCP Midstream. It's an oil and gas company. And my product helps us most efficiently route gas from the well to the plant. So some prediction in there.
George.
Hey, I'm George. I'm a product manager at Facebook, and I am a mentee in the program, and I'm currently in San Francisco, so it's bright and early over here.
Great. Greg.
Seems to be a sticky mute button. Hey everybody, my name is Greg Rokowski. Currently a product manager at a company called CB Insights. I've been a product manager for about 5 years officially, and I currently work in New York City but do live in Long Island.
Gotcha. Okay. Shobit.
Hi, I'm Shobit, a product manager at Google for Crashlytics, which is our crash reporting for mobile applications. I've been a product manager for 6 years, and I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, where it's cold.
Today, we are joined by one of our mentors, Andrew Shue, to lead a talk on product manage your way into a product management job. So I'll now turn it over to Andrew to take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for your time today. So as mentioned, I'll be speaking today on how to use product management to get yourself a product management gig. So to kind of get to practice the craft while also getting yourself a job. A bit about me to start. In my past, I was an electrical engineer, and I have about 7+ years of product management. In my past, I've helped launch Android and iOS apps to consumers, helped around 700,000 people, coordinated a design refresh of Google's sign-in experience, helped grow startups that use machine learning to value homes, as well as consulted large organizations to help raise company motivation and performance. At present, I'm at Oscar Health, helping manage our doctor information to help members find care most effectively. So why this is important, or why I'm speaking about this today. So fortunately, I have experience over the past 7+ years, kind of working for many different companies, conducting 2 from scratch job searches, as well as working within 3 different cities. Furthermore, it seems like finding a job has just been kind of a consistent point of conversation as I've mentored within the Product Mentor program these last 2 years. So it just felt like really relevant, as well as I just came through a from scratch job search this July. Okay, so today, this is what I'll be going through. So kind of a product management process and frameworks to kind of keep you moving and rolling through and figuring out basically how to get product market fit. So the product is yourself and the market is the job industry that you're looking for in a specific role. But processes and frameworks, they're not very clear to start, or they're not clear how you might apply them. So I'm hoping to then tell stories that can provide inspiration and help you kind of customize ideas that you might have. Close to the end, we'll do some lessons on kind of favorite lessons learned. And then I have an ask for you actually at the end of this if you are job searching. Okay, so to jump into the product management processes and frameworks, I don't know how new this will be for many people, but I think the first thing is always just to start solving the problem. So a lot of people, you have an idea about a problem that might exist, but many times you just have an idea of a solution. More important than kind of doing research on your solution is actually going and solving that problem. I find that comes up a lot. So in the case of looking for a job, you really need to start interviewing, speaking to people, seeing if you can find that job. But always the number one thing is going and actually trying to solve that problem. And what that will do then is it'll give you time to retro. Oh, sorry about that. This is the outline. Sorry about that. So it's problem solving, a problem solving process, and then a roadmap for you to articulate and write down your plan, and then a framework for you to write down your adjustments. I actually had jumped into the problem solving piece, my mistake. Okay, so jumping into the actual problem solving. So like I said, it's very important just to start in that problem solving process. So going out and starting the interview. And then what naturally leads after that is actually to retro how you did, decide on adjustments you need to make. And then a very important thing within product management is also then sharing your results. It's important to share your results internally with your team so they know what's happening. It's important to share it externally with your clients and with other departments. It's also important to actually market to yourself and kind of keep yourself motivated about where you're going. And so this is kind of the typical product management process that I use for any sort of problem. As part of the problem solving process, on a weekly and definitely monthly basis, typically weekly, I do the following kind of 2 framework maps to keep track of everything that is going on. And so it's really the definition of where we'd like to go and how we're going to get there. So first framework that I regularly track is vision, mission, and monthly roadmap. Vision is kind of your 5 to 10 year goal in the realm of job searching. Maybe it's where you want to be in 5 to 10 years. The mission would be the statement that you have to others about what job you're looking for now, what role, what industry, why it's important to you. And then your monthly roadmap is just, where have you come from, and what is your goal next month, and what do you hope to accomplish? The second part of the framework that I like to regularly track is consistently taking down what are the lessons that you've learned for retros, What are the accomplishments that you've made? This is extremely important, both personally and for teams. I think as product managers, we many times are always focused on what do we need to solve next? How do we drive more value? And we forget how far we've come. And so it's very important to keep track of your accomplishments. And then finally, I find that in regularly reviewing your retro and your accomplishments, you naturally start to come up with new goals for the week and figure out how you may update your roadmap. So we just went through kind of the product management problem solving process in two kind of segments to continuously document, to kind of keep you problem solving, and then being able to orient yourself and move ahead. But as I said, that's cute. I mean, that's really just a framework and processes that I think a lot of people have heard of before. So let's see how that actually plays out in the real world, which tends to be extremely messy. Okay, so the story to kind of break down using that process and those product management tools. So this past actually July, I was laid off in job searching. The startup I'd been at had been successful, but we actually changed and started targeting a different set of clients to kind of de-risk our past situation. So unfortunately, we didn't acquire customers as soon as we needed to, so I was laid off. So month one, what was my quote unquote roadmap? Well, I actually just wanted to transition smoothly and try to relax. This is the second purely from scratch job search that I've been in. And I know previously what actually happened to me was I took design courses. I started taking engineering classes. I founded a company and I tried to buy a home the last time I was unemployed. So the lesson for me, the retro from the last unemployment, was just trying to relax a bit. But in reality, that rarely happens. So definitely not relaxing. Multiple trips to T-Mobile just to get onto a new phone. 2 extra weeks of work just helping transition off the old startup, which I still have a great relationship with today. Being at home a lot, started to organize the entire home and started receiving unsolicited introductory emails and meetings. So in reality, I'm forced to write a mission statement to start talking about the type of role and job and industry that I was looking for, and forced to prepare for meetings to try and find new jobs. So just to kind of dive into the meeting prep process, I think this actually, links over to user experience research as well, or, your market. But before I take any meeting, I do a lot of deep research on a person's background. So for example, I go to LinkedIn, looking for connections, looking for that person's stability or tenure at the job they are at, looking at Greenhouse for the company they're working at to kind of get a sense of the culture of the company. Looking at Crunchbase because the round of funding kind of tells you what stage of growth a company might be in, as well as what their next goals might be. Looking at their blogs, what have they recently been focusing on? What are they an expert at? What can I ask this person that I'm meeting about? And in publications, what is that company's marketing focus on? What are their major initiatives? And so the goal of all that research and prep is just so that you can ask thoughtful questions. You have a hypothesis on what they're working on, what their problems are, and how you can help. So after this meeting prep, the meetings, typically the flow that I would see is you come up, you do pleasantries, I tell my story, they tell their story, and we kind of offer each other topical help and just talk generally about different positions and problems that their companies experience. I drank a ton of coffee, but at the end of it, what was typically the most ideal outcome was actually just asking for help and introductions, offering help definitely where I could. And I didn't find myself too much ever explicitly asking for a job, but this is the typical meeting flow. And so this to me is the actual problem solving piece of that product management process that we're talking about. You're there, you're working through to understand their situation. You are the product. Can you fit? Can you add value? So as always, after you kind of are problem solving, you want to retro. So first off, I was extremely caffeinated, way too many meetings. Definitely want to start switching to tea. I found that my past stories were not specific enough. So to just talk about the companies that I'd worked at or talking about what I'd launched wasn't specific enough. I needed to review my past, turn it into a clear story, and actually articulate hey, this is what I launched, this is what I managed, these are the problems that I overcame, and just getting more and more specific versus being kind of a higher level. And my mission was unclear. I wasn't because I didn't know the market yet. I would argue that I wasn't clear enough asking for the specific role or type of company I was looking for, and I wasn't actually sure about what to do about that. So you can see it's kind of messy, but we're retroing. I'm learning, so it was a good experience. And so now to go, okay, so we've walked through the actual product process. So problem solved, retro, thinking about adjustments I can make, but then the documentation, this is where it starts to come in. So previously you can see, so if we imagine at the beginning of this month, I didn't have a mission, I didn't have a vision. My whole roadmap was just to relax. But I was forced to write a mission. And this is what I mean by mission not being super clear. This is actually an email I wrote to somebody. You can see, at least to me, this feels long. It's kind of opaque. It's not as clear as I'd like it to be. So it's definitely something I knew that I wanted to refine. But I documented this because this is how I'd be able to refine and look at where I'd come from and try and make this more and more specific. So I documented a roadmap, documented a mission, and then went through the documentation of retro and accomplishments. So this is a quick, just collating. So drink tea, practice speaking about my past accomplishments, keep searching and practicing my mission, the accomplishments where I met a lot of interesting people, landed an interview, and then goals, thinking about what I could do next is, let me make sure I start applying in earnest, really kind of open all the kind of top of funnel channels that I can to meet people, meet companies, and get more comfortable with my story. And so when writing this and looking at kind of what had happened in the last month, it naturally led to updating the roadmap. So I knew I wanted to make a new mission kind of going forward. In September, the next month, I really want to start applying and interviewing in earnest. And the goal was that I set for myself was to get 3 interviews. So you can see how we problem solved, we retroed, and then we were documenting so that we can kind of see and share where we are. So month 2, applying an interview. So going along the lines of just starting to problem solve, turned on LinkedIn, emailed friends directly asking for job leads. I'm always surprised by how bashful people are to reach out to people. Trying to mention in the flow of conversations with people I've met that, I was laid off, and explain kind of what excited me and what I'm looking for. And then in reality, trying to take every meeting, just get those reps in to really practice and refine you as a product. So, speaking with friends, speaking with recruiters, taking as many interviews as I could. So let's jump into the kind of first interview that I took. So this is actually a public company. They'd been around for 20 years. They had 2,000 people, bi-coastal, and they're actually going through a big reorg. They had acquired a startup that would take them from being more of a manual operation to more automated. And so I met them through this startup that they'd acquired that they trusted to automate much of their business practices. So what that interview looked like was meeting with 2 general managers in New York who gave me business context, told me about key problems that the company was facing, and then actually had situational asks. So they said, hey, given the business context and the problems that we're facing, what would you do? And that conversation went really smoothly. And so they transitioned me to meeting with a project manager who I'd be working closely with on the projects to solve the problems that I'd spoke with the GMs in New York about. So this was mainly actually a process conversation, looking at how we'd work together. That went smoothly. And so after that, they introduced me to the folks in Seattle, because I'd be kind of coordinating projects between both offices. So both the new manager and a head of business. And again, talking about company structure, the new responsibilities, kind of the goals for the next 6 months. Again, smoothly. Then I met a co-founder. So this is actually the co-founder of the AI startup that had been acquired. Just talked about what he's looking for. So over the course of 6 weeks, spoke with 5 leaders across 3 offices. And I thought it was going well. But the result was actually completely getting ghosted after about 6 weeks. So complete radio silence. So that can lead to a lot of doubts about, hey, as a product for myself, what's going on here? And I think that definitely applies as well to products that you're building. As you're searching for product market fit, you're kind of stumbling around in the dark. So problem solved. All right, time to retro. So besides being surprised, some fun added context to this is actually the co-founder of the startup that was acquired by this company that was managing the reorg was actually a friend's stepfather's company. I reached out to him once, still nothing, and I stopped. I mean, I'm sure we'll see each other again soon, but retroing it, it's just the realization really that, you know, no one owes you really anything. Volatility is kind of constant within companies. And speaking to another friend, he reminded me, you know, at least half the time as well, when a company rejects you, it's not you. Budgets change, needs change. Company could be reorganizing. In the case of startups, many times it could even be on the brink of shutting down. So the adjustments that I wanted to make based on this retro was just getting used to no feedback, as well as practicing evaluating a company's stability, because I think that's kind of a key factor many times in a smooth interview and hiring process as well. So that was one of the first main interviews that I did that month. And that leads naturally into kind of another interview that I thought was pretty interesting. So for this second interview, there's a 100-person startup here in New York. They were at their Series B, so they were in a growth stage. And how the interview went was like this. So I first met with the COO. It was quite casual, just getting to know. Most interesting to me is why a COO was conducting interviews at the first stage, because normally it's a recruiter. And he said that it was really that important for them to be finding talent. So I thought that was a great answer. And after that, I met with the CTO and managing director. And the question that stands out the CTO asked was really around, you know, what is the role of product management? What's the ideal kind of partnership? And we kind of discussed how product management is kind of a translator and understanding many facets of the business, framing problems so people can solve them as effectively as possible. And then went through different conceptual questions, such as, you know, what is your favorite application? How would you scale that out? How would you increase its impact given unlimited resources? Again, that went well. So then I met with the CEO. He talked through different kind of how they problem solved, how they innovated on the problems that they were facing. Actually went through as well how the company had shifted its culture. It had previously been a sales-led organization with product and engineering left to build product after the sales cycle had been closed, and how they'd shifted that actually by having to let go of quite a few of the sales leaders to shift towards a product organization. So again, very, very profound conversations, and I was very impressed that they'd actually shifted their culture. I actually then scheduled another meeting with the managing director to talk through the role shifts and expectations and make sure that we were on the same page. And then finally, fifth interview, come into a 30-minute meeting, and out of nowhere, at least seeming to me, I get a consulting question, which is, you know, how many ways could you organize these paintings into folders for an imaginary customer? And so I really nailed down who the customer was, just thought about how just dividing the customer and thinking through the exact solution for that customer. And the result was another complete radio silence. So another 6 weeks of kind of meeting everybody within the organization, talks going very well, seemingly so. And then just, again, absolutely no feedback. So this retro actually took a lot longer than the kind of a standard retro. So I'd gone, you know, done the interview. Now it's time to learn. But honestly, this one took a while. So first, it was just getting over what a ridiculous kind of, at least to me, someone comes in 5 minutes late to a 5th round interview. And then a question, at least to me, completely unrelated to my job, and not even a word of response or feedback or anything. So 2 weeks pass, and I realized, hey, you know, I really need to start diving into this retro, regardless of how much it hurts or what my beliefs are. So looking into it, I realized that there are a couple flaws that I had. So first was, I was definitely having false expectations. I felt like I should solve problems here like I solve them in the real world. I've got experience with product. Well, that's false. This is not the real world. This is an interview. Furthermore, I didn't feel like I was accurately solving the real questions being asked, which was, they're not only asking you the questions of, hey, this, you know, how would you solve this problem, or these conceptual, but they're looking for culture fit. They're looking for expansive thinking. They're looking for your creativity, looking for your grit. They're looking for a lot of other factors, and need to make sure that I address that. Two other shortcomings where I wasn't managing my time effectively. It's a very compressed time frame. People are naturally coming from other meetings. People are often going to be late and they're switching context. You've got to manage the time and not being positive enough. Thinking through that, so now that you've made the retro, as always, what adjustments are you going to make after you've kind of looked at the situation and how things went? Well, the adjustment I made was I was actually going to practice against those failings that we just talked about. So I asked friends who interviewed at their companies to ask me all kinds of different interview questions. And I practiced answering them in a 30-minute time frame. Practice the positivity, practice time management, practice like moving it forward, solving different types of problem. And I did this about 5 or 6 times with many different people. And some major adjustments I found, besides being positive and being able to push something forward, was anytime I'm stuck, I think something very positive is to work backwards. So, for example, like if this feature is going to be successful, what has to be true? Well, it has to reach your customers. It needs to be engaging. It needs to, have a conversion rate of 50%. It needs to make this much money, etc. What's nice there is as you break apart what's required to be successful, then you can actually ask your interviewer, hey, so these are the major modules, major pieces that would be required to solve the problem that you've posed to me. Which one would you like me to focus on? I found this very, very helpful, as well as speaking with different kind of Google and Facebook PMs. After answering a conceptual question, I remember one PM said that he likes to think 3D after he poses a solution. So he thinks vertically, up and down, like how can I have a more expansive problem? How could I be even more impactful? How could I get more specific? How could I solve this problem for this person directly in the context of their life? Or horizontally, what other companies could I integrate? Who could I partner with? But it gives you the ability to then not even just land on your solution, but to think expansively about how you could be more effective or scale it in different ways. So that was actually the adjustments that I made after the retro. And so that was kind of the end of the month. So jumping back into, okay, so we did the process. So we saw the problem, we retroed, made adjustments, and then I found that this documentation as well as it sets us up for the sharing. So let's jump into the documentation at the end of the month. So the retros, don't expect feedback. I need to lose my expectations, be positive, manage my time, answer the true questions being asked. Accomplishments, regardless, I did make it to 2 final round interviews at companies I was very much excited about and respected. And I felt more and more comfortable talking about my past accomplishments. The goals for the next month, as a friend told me, there's an opportunity to make a world-class network while you're interviewing. And not many people have that time when you have a full-time job. So enjoy it, kind of relish it. So my goals were to meet more people, get to know the New York scene more, and find communities I wanted to be a part of long-term. So after kind of documenting this, it naturally leads to now, as we see, updating the roadmap. So vision, still unknown. I took a bunch of life quizzes, didn't provide much clarity. My mission really started to refine. So I started landing on, I'm really looking for a company with more than 100 people. I knew that I'd worked in startups quite a bit in the past. So I was trying to look at more mid-size in healthcare, emergency services, or energy. And in October, so after the goal was to actually invest in networks so I could expand the top of my funnel, so I could meet more people and have a broader base of people to speak with. Okay, so jumping into month 3, investing in networks. So first thing, just to think about how I was going to set this up and meet more people. So a great way to kind of meet different networks is university alumni groups, ex-company groups, and meetup groups. Shout out to Product Mentor, just like this. And so, yeah, I actually set up meetings with, or I started attending events at all these different networking events. I attended about 4 events that this month. Met or found 2 amazing companies. Met a lot of inspiring people. Got a lot of introductions. Didn't get any interviews out of it, being frank. So had good conversations. Was inspired. Felt like I got to know the market more, but there wasn't nothing actually direct fruit coming out of that. So retroing it, I found that it was best if I went with one other person. It would just kind of keep conversations moving a bit smoother. You know, they bring good energy, different types of questions along with me when we go. An easy way to kind of take the angst out of feeling like it's quote unquote networking was just choosing long-term communities that I wanted to be a part of. So just being consistent then at that point, you know, you want to be there, their community you want to be a part of. So just be consistent. I knew my mission was landing better. And then I knew that I wanted to continue being part of these communities, even if after getting a job. Okay, so in parallel, not due to networking, but just due to work in the past, I also had kind of a third interview. So with this company, it was 200 people, 200-person startup, Series D, and went something like this. So it started off with a recruiter interview, just giving me a company background. And then I did a call with the GM discussing the product role and their needs and why this was the right time for them to hire the next kind of product manager. After that, I did an in-person, again with the GM and the head of operations. And in this one, they asked me to do a case study where I redesigned an existing big feature of theirs. And then I headed into the all-day interview, which we'll get into in more detail. Okay, so besides getting into the all-day interview, which I knew was going to be kind of about 3 to 4 groups and a presentation, I conducted a Premortem. And this is actually something that I use in product all the time with new big features that we're going to launch. And so it's looking at the reasons that if this feature launched, what are the main reasons that this feature could fail? And how do we actively mitigate against that failure? So thinking about the past retros that we went through, so imagine, you know, job 2, the different lessons that we had, I listed the main reasons that I would fail at this all-day interview. So number 1 is not actively managing my time. And I figured I would mitigate that by always maintaining a sense of urgency, recognizing and knowing that I'm fighting the clock, and just constantly actively managing it. Second, is not being positive. So regardless of what happens in my expectations, I need to stay stay calm and positive. And then finally, looking at it is just the fact that what if I get off topic and don't answer the exact question that they're asking? And my mitigation was actually going to be, I will notice when the conversation's not flowing as much or people seem slightly confused. I'd actually rebase, and I thought about it and said, well, the only way I can find out what to do is ask them. So I said, you know what, I'm going to pull up and ask them directly if the solution is going in the direction they're expecting. And if it's not, I'm going to ask them directly, what are they looking for and expecting? So the interview, so we jumped in, so they set up the problem. So with the head of operations and 2 of his team, so we kind of defined a scaling issue that they were having with ingesting information. Then I met with the CTO and 2 engineers. And this one, just to research the technical stack behind the problem. And I didn't feel that this was actually going very smooth. So thinking about the pre-mortem, I rebased. I said, hey, you know, what do you think I should focus on to the CTO? And he said, look, just really focus on the problem. You don't need to worry about the customer situation or the tech stack. You know, you should take this problem at face value. And so that was very helpful. After that, I had kind of a stressful lunch because I'm sitting there thinking, okay, the solution I've been framing for the last hour and a half, 2 hours, isn't as accurate as I want it to be. So it was kind of a stressful lunch. And then we jumped into the next 2 hours of problem solving. So what I did was during lunch, I was thinking about, okay, what is the more accurate solution? How do I kind of get this to where I need it to go? So again, pulling that same mitigation strategy, I rebased with the GM. I said, hey, here's the problem that I've heard and the solution that I'm now moving towards. Does this feel accurate? And this is how I feel like I'm going to present it. What's the ideal presentation format for you? And extremely helpful. He said, hey, you know, I think this is the right direction. And giving the audience the most accurate kind of presentation I'd love to see is a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And so I was like, perfect. I now had a structure of how I wanted to present the solution. So what I did then is I spent 30 minutes building upon that 30, 60, 90-day plan. I reviewed it with an engineer, got feedback, built it with them together, spent another 30 minutes solo, again, building, and then actually came back to the GM and got feedback again, and then gave that presentation to 8 people about a 3-month roadmap to solve the issue they were facing. So the result was actually, it was actually really positive. People were really happy about the presentation. And in fact, they conducted an immediate retro with the entire kind of leadership team right after my presentation, gave great feedback, it was positive, and then gave me a whole hour more to ask questions. So it was a really positive interview, and I was really excited. And the result is they actually hired someone more experienced. So that's a huge downer. But it kind of goes back to the lessons that we've kind of been building upon, as you can see. So retroing it, the past retro 100% helped. The mitigation strategies worked. I'm learning, I'm evolving myself as a product. And it reinforced the past lesson that your performance is at most half of the equation in interviews. So then thinking through the adjustments that I might make off that, the main items for me were try to get to a solution even faster and add more perspectives. And the perspectives I wanted to add in the solution were actually start presenting design and more technical solutions sooner. Okay, so again, we're kind of near the end of the month, or actually I usually do this on a weekly basis, but time to document, kind of think through and look at what you've accomplished in the retros. So the retro from the last month is just, okay, great, things are going smoother. Time to practice presenting design solutions and technical. How do I evolve that? Accomplishments, I did have 3 interviews, and I made a lot of progress getting more comfortable in these interviews and mitigating against kind of weaknesses in the past. And the goals coming up for the next month were, excited to meet even more people, keep expanding the top of my funnel. And I started getting interested as well into how VCs evaluate markets and choose their investments, because I felt that this would help me also select companies in a more effective way. And then the adjustment, as you can imagine from the retro, was practice getting to design technical solutions more quickly within an interview. Okay, as well, so filling out the adjustment piece, filling out goals. Now I started filling out the roadmap. So imagine if I was on a team, I could actually share with the team, where we'd come from and where we're trying to go. Vision, I was still not clear on. I don't know what I want to do specifically long term with my life. Mission, a lot more conviction. Definitely looking for a company that's 100 people plus, working in medical wellness, emergency response, or energy, and knowing that I'd like to close a job by next April to kind of add more and more constraints, which is always helpful as a product manager when you're trying to prioritize. And from a roadmap standpoint, for the next month, the goal would be to study the New York market, learn how VCs evaluate industries, find more industries I'm interested in, and then hit pause in December. Okay, so going to month 4, which I themed as, studying the New York market. So I was doing the interview. So this is a 1,200 person Series D company. So it went something like, so I had a call with the recruiter. They came in a little late, gave me background. And then I did another recruiter call, and then finally did a product situational call where we discussed a problem that this team had faced in the past and how I might solve it, which went really smoothly. And then an all-day kind of on-site with 4 product managers, where we went through kind of 6 different case studies about different situations that had happened within the company, conceptual questions, as well as kind of talking through the culture, what they were looking for, what opportunities existed, as well as a engineering problem where 2 engineers kind of came in with a architecture drawing of their exact stack and discussed a problem they were working on. And we kind of worked through it and treated it just like if we were actually partnered, and solved it. And so the result of this was, this is actually the interview process for Oscar Health, and ended up in me actually getting a job. So again, so this was the actual problem solving. So I'm the product, I'm there. So even given success, you always need to retro. So 2 mistakes that I saw were, one is I didn't know all the roles open at Oscar at the time. Someone specifically asked if there are other roles other than the one we were discussing that I was interested in. So next time I want to do adjust and definitely study all open roles at a company. And I could have reached out to friends earlier to learn more about Oscar. So those are kind of the 2 adjustments that I landed on that I wanted to make. Okay, so to recap, so how to use product management to kind of get yourself a product management gig. Well, here's a process that I regularly use to solve problems as a product manager. So start solving the problem. Don't make assumptions about what that solution would be. As soon as you're out there, you're going to have great feedback points to start retroing what you can adjust, make those adjustments, and then do the documentation in the following pages so that you can share with yourself, with your team, internal to your company, where you are, where you're trying to go, and what kind of your latest lessons are. Regularly document your roadmap. So what's your vision? That's going to be much more in line with your company. Document your mission, where you're trying to go in a year, and document what you're doing on a monthly basis, as well as regularly make your adjustments. Collate your retros, collate your accomplishments, be able to talk about them on a moment's notice, and refine your goals using this documentation. So outside of that, jump into just some other favorite bonus lessons. So one is when I found industry maps, I found this so helpful when looking for a job, because so CBI Insights has a lot of great industry maps. So it can really help you kind of pick an area of focus or to spread your focus out across multiple areas. So you get a wide exposure to the amount of companies and the problems that they're solving within an industry. But I found this kind of a very motivating way to look for jobs and look for introductions. And then the other major thing that just really stuck is it's all about the people. Don't stare at the computer screen. It's really not going to give you feedback, and it rarely gets you interviews. Just make sure you keep a steady stream of conversations, meetings, and interviews going. That's really what's going to give you your feedback and get you your practice in. And also, there's a lot of what ifs when you interview. You're kind of bumping your head around in the dark, just like when you're trying to find product market fit. So two guiding posts that I think are always helpful is just think long term. If a company or person that you're meeting, you know that you want to have a long-term relationship with, they're a good bet to keep the conversation going. And follow the energy. You'll notice what's inspiring to you and energizing. So stick with that. Finally, if you are job searching, I have an ask for you at the end of this, which is to take the first step. So, write an email, call a friend, walk over to your roommate right now and just say, hey, long time, whatever your pleasantries are, and say, in your past, what did you do? What did you own? What have you accomplished? And hey, I'm looking for what you're looking for, what product management role, in what industry, and why are you interested? And ask if they have time to grab coffee or talk next week and kick off that conversation so you can get started immediately. And with that, thank you for everyone's time today.
Thank you to today's speaker for a fantastic discussion. As always, this presentation will be posted to our SlideShare channel. And a big thank you from me to our presenter, and thank you to everyone else who joined us today at the Product Mentor. And don't forget, if you're interested in being a product mentor, like today's speaker, the product people of all sorts, all around the world, visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today. If you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, visit our very own free for all job board at theproductjobs.com. And finally, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. And see you all next time. Have a good day. Bye.